I got a request here. This is some dialogue back and forth, some text dialogue between a guy and his girlfriend, and they get in a little bit of a spat over what she's doing with her time with her kid and the father of her kid. We'll just put it that way. This actually popped up in a discussion forum somebody forwarded me because they were making reference to a chapter in my book. So I thought I would add some context to it and some clarity. And it's really just like reason number 97 why you don't deal with single moms. So let me just read this and then I'll provide you the context. So it says over here, blah, 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 back and forth. And then she goes, I want to let you know that I'm meeting with, I'm not even going to mention the kid's name, but the kid and her dad after work for dinner and a film. Will be done around 9 or 10. I just wanted to let you know before I accepted the invite. I hope that doesn't bother you. Now, first things first here, she's not asking for his permission. She's not asking for his forgiveness or anything. She's just basically telling him, I'm going to go hang out with my kid and her dad, and we're going to go watch a movie and have dinner together. And then she says, I hope that doesn't bother you. So he responds with, I'm going to put it the way it sounds in my brain. My girlfriend is hanging out at her apartment with an ex-boyfriend and her daughter while I'm at work. Now, he's not wrong, but let's just continue. Actually, I would be going to his house, and yes, that is what is happening, but I have had this tradition with him for years and kept it since I moved out before you and I met. And he says, I know. And then the second page and the last one says, okay, then. So now he rephrases it. My girlfriend is going to her ex-boyfriend's house to hang out with him and his daughter while I'm at work. And then she says, I'm trying to understand what bothers you about this? And he says, it's a respect issue. It feels disrespectful when my girlfriend goes to her ex-boyfriend's house to hang out with him and his daughter while I'm at work. If you're still doing that after you've broken up, then your relationship is not over. I'm not a cuck. I'm going to define cuck for the new people watching because there's always like a dozen people. What's a cuck, Rich? A cuckold is somebody that essentially raises the child of another man, or there's any number of definitions. It's always disparaging. Basically, he likes to watch another man be intimate with his wife or girlfriend. He raises the child of another man. There's a whole bunch of different ways that it's been defined, but that's essentially what it is. It's not flattering. It's always disparaging. And then he says, if I'm on the wrong, please tell me how. She says, I can't answer you right now because I'm about to log into a meeting. Let's talk later, blah, blah, blah. And, that's typically how things like that go. And speaking of going, I have to get a move on here. I got shit to do. So the context to that I thought was, it's kind of funny and interesting at the same time. But at the end of the day, if you're going to deal with a single mom, you're going to deal with shit like this. It's just inevitable. You invite a woman into your life that has a child or children in tow from a different marriage or a relationship or a boyfriend or something like that. You're going to end up in a situation like this sooner or later. In this case, it just sounds like it's one kid. I've come across a number of different guys that I've dealt with on a one-on-one coaching basis, and sometimes it's multiple kids from multiple different fathers. You want to talk about adding, inviting complexity and complicating your life unnecessarily? Go date a chick that's got a bunch of kids from a bunch of different men and see how easy, lucrative, and fun your life ends up being in an environment like that. It just doesn't. It ends up being a freaking nightmare. So is this guy wrong? Well, not really. Would you want your girlfriend or wife hanging out with an ex, having dinner and a movie? I understand that there's an anchor here, which is the kid, the common sort of denominator between these two people. But, guys like this are forever going to struggle with this dynamic. Women hate it when guys have children from a prior relationship and they don't. Guys generally are more accepting, if we can put it that way, of women's past and her choices. But the biggest difference, generally between men and women is when it comes to men, generally speaking, they have a lot less custody than women. I think women get something like 80% of the custody order still, and something like 43 or 44% of children today are raised by a single mother. Generally speaking, if you're a man or a woman and you're dating, if you're a dude dating a woman with kids, she's got her kids pretty much all the time. A lot of these dudes, even if they have children of their own, they often end up in a scenario where they spend more time raising some other dude's kids than they do raising their own kids, right? Now, the reference that he made to cuck, it's pretty much spot on, because she's basically cucking him by spending time with this guy. Some may disagree, others may argue it, whatever, it doesn't matter. He's got a point. The point of this that I'm really trying to make here is, it doesn't matter how you try to slice and dice this. They say there's all these different ways to skin a cat and deal with it, blah, 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 blah. Sure, but again, as I mentioned in that chapter in my book, and it's also in one of the 20 red flags, and the book and the 20 red flags, it's pinned below. The 20 red flag chapter you can get for free, by the way. You just get on my email list, that's pinned below. You can see what all the details are there, or you can just grab the book, it's on Amazon. But the point that I'm trying to make is, stop inviting complexity into your life unnecessarily by dealing with single mommies. There's always extra layers of problem that show up when you start dealing in this area. It's never simple, it's never easy, but definitely isn't fun, and it sure as hell ain't lucrative. You want an easy, lucrative, and fun life? Don't date single mommies. Stay away from them. I mean, if you want to, get into an FWB type of scenario, friends with benefits, fine. But as soon as she starts giving you the, hey, my kids have been looking over my shoulder and wondering who I've been texting, and I think it'd be cool if, you came over sometime and you met them, sort of thing, and took us all out to Chuck E. Cheese and blah, blah, blah. That's when you're like, nope, next, I'm good. That is the extent that you should, that is a boundary, that is a barrier, gentlemen, that you should put around yourself and your life, especially if you're a single guy with no kids. I mean, in my book, in the chapter dealing with single moms, there was one exception which I mentioned that might be ideal for a guy with a kid to date a single mom. You can go read it, but it's generally speaking mostly single guys with no kids dealing with women that have kids. Dudes are so forgiving, way too forgiving in taking on the burden of essentially what is the performance of playing the role of a parent, and they end up having no authority as a parent, but 100% responsibility as a parent to a kid that they didn't even father, doesn't have their DNA, sure as hell doesn't have their last name. There's no benefit to it, absolutely none whatsoever. It's all downside and risk. And, speaking of risk, to give you an example, I can't count the number of guys that I've had conversations with that were dating single mommies that put themselves in an environment, or essentially a position, where because they were with them for a certain period of time and where they lived in their state or province, the government, the state, let's just call it, viewed it as a marriage, because after you live together for a certain period of time, it's known as common law. You can be on the hook, and several guys have been on the hook for child support for a kid that you did not father, that does not have your last name and doesn't have your DNA, because you played the role of daddy long enough. So in the eyes of the state, in the eyes of the government, that's sufficient for them to basically say, well, Bill, even though they didn't come out of your balls and you didn't father them, you still spent 2.5 years living together acting as a father, and you're now on the hook for child support for, until they're adults, basically. So again, you guys can post these things and say, dialogue here and there, and here's a field report, and how would you deal with this, and da-da-da, I'm with a single mom, and, the kid, blah, 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 not straight. Why? Why? Seriously, man, why? Just don't do it. The only reason, and I'm going to close on this note, let's wrap this up. The only reason why dudes deal with single moms is generally because, one, there's an abundance of them, and I understand that, because, there's no accountability, to women. I know that there's some YouTube channels out there that get a lot of views and make a lot of money off trying to hold women accountable, to reasonable standards, or even men's reasonable standards, and they never go anywhere. It just goes for entertainment. The ones I'm talking about, sort of thing. But it's absolutely absurd and unnecessary to do any of that stuff, when the only reason why you're generally dealing with single moms is because you are making concessions. You're lowering your standards. If you want to live a better life, if you want to get more out of life, if you want to excel at life and basically live in an easy, lucrative, fun life, sort of thing, you need to hold yourself to higher standards. There's no guy that I know of that's successful, wealthy, in great shape, interesting, captivating. They do fun things with their lives. They've got a lot of social proof. They've got influence. Like they're more of a top shelf sort of guy that is going to select a woman with kids in tow over a woman that's younger, hotter, more fertile, without some other dude's kids in tow. They always go for the younger, hotter ones without kids. Be that guy, right? Level yourself up so that you're in the top 1%, 5%, whatever that happens to be, but be that guy where you get into the top percentile sort of thing, and then you don't have to deal with any of this nonsense. You can just move past it and just be like, no, you're cute and all, and I don't mind doing, limited sort of like friends with base, benefits sort of arrangement, but I don't want to meet Billy and Bobby and Sally or any, forget it. Don't invite that problem in your life, and you'll never have to have, conversations like this with a bunch of random strangers on a chat board after you read some books or watched a couple of videos, asking them to try to, offer you some clarity and some help with the dumb shit that you've, been doing with your life. Anyway.
All right, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed that clip. If you want to check out the full-length podcast episode, you can find that right over here. Also, make sure you visit my website over here where you'll find my supplements, the opportunity to book me privately one-on-one for coaching, and most importantly, my new School of Unplugging, which you'll find on the courses tab. Newer to the channel? Hit subscribe.